Taking a picture from the new House, 89 Democratic women now joining Nancy Pelosi, House Speaker, once again making history this week. Want to talk about all the new developments on our roundtable now, joined by our chief political analyst, Matthew Dowd. Stephanie Brown James, co-founder of the Collective PAC, which helps recruit and elect progressive African-American candidates. Welcome to you. Co-host of The View, our friend Meghan McCain from The View. Democratic Mayor of Chicago, Rahm Emanuel, and Republican John James ran for Senate in Michigan this time around. And I see you have the Upper Peninsula there on your tie.
Yes, sir.
Well, welcome to all of you. Matt, let me start with you. What are we learning about this new world in Washington as we watch the first week play out?
Well, I think what we're learning is Donald Trump hasn't changed, has not adjusted his behavior in the aftermath of a major election loss in the midterms, which normally presidents do. President Obama tried to adjust his behavior, President Bush after 2006, President Clinton. Donald Trump hasn't adjusted behavior, but we also see that Nancy...
That's worked for him in the past, hasn't it?
For who? For Donald Trump?
Yeah,
but he's never faced a opposition that had in charge of one branch of government. So, and now that Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats are in charge of the House, we've also learned that Nancy Pelosi, who is stepped up and is ready for prime time. She obviously served as Speaker before, but she's ready for this. She runs the caucus. I think the way in which she is engaged, I think, has been very helpful to the caucus. And so I think that Donald Trump, is in a totally different world now, and he has his work cut out for him.
John James, should he have changed?
Well, I think that what he will say is that what he's been doing has been working. And I think the Democrats should be very careful taking 2018 success as an endorsement of 2016 policy. I think that what needs to happen is the American people are sick and tired of the partisanship and the bickering. The American people want to get real things done. The thing with this shutdown and the border wall, these are things that the Democrats and Republicans have agreed on for decades. We're just haggling over price. There are 800,000 people on furlough right now who aren't getting paid. And I believe that you have a Congress that for years has failed in its duty to get comprehensive immigration reform and it has failed to get a substantive and consistent budget getting done.
You've served in that Congress. Any danger Democrats are going to overplay their hand here?
Oh, anytime you got 200 people with different views, yes. What I would do if I was Speaker Pelosi is not allow the negotiations to be the only arena. Within passing the bill, and if Schumer files Rule 14, putting it forward, you already lost 3 Republican senators says, let's open up the business. I would make sure every day you are passing that same bill and just chisel away at the will of the Republicans. The second is I think there's a point of pressure that will happen. And if TSA workers walk off of the line, once this becomes relevant to the American people, and it's no longer just 800,000 workers, something that they rely on starts to break down, that's when the pressure point means everybody's going to focus and say, okay, we got to cut.
And that could hit this week if they don't open this week. Meghan McCain, no paychecks on January 11th. A lot of people don't realize we're not just talking about Washington D.C. here. These are federal workers all across the country.
Yeah, I mean, and the one thing is that military and veterans are still currently being paid, which is normally the hand that Democrats play, and obviously is something that hits particularly close to home. But the problem with this right now is that any concession by Democrats is going to look like caving from the progressive left. And so I don't see, we were talking about in the green room, all of us, I don't see how anyone meets in the middle because both sides are going to scream bloody murder depending on what kind of compromise. And when you're talking about, the lack of bipartisanship in Washington, D.C., I think this is ground zero of what we're talking about.
Nancy Pelosi is being fueled in part by a lot of the members you helped elect in 2018. Let me ask you the same question I asked Mayor Emanuel. Are you concerned that this energy becomes, and what Liz Cheney was saying, radical and out of touch?
No, I think at the end of the day, what the Democrats need to do right now is over-communicate and get out of Washington. I anticipate that President Trump is going to get on the trail fairly soon, which I think would be bananas. But I think that it's important right now for the Democrats to understand that they have to shore up their base, and they have to make sure that people understand that, look, what's going to happen in the next few weeks if this shutdown continues is that you're not going to get your tax returns. You're not going to be able to see your lives get any better. And I can tell you what, President Trump will need to build a wall around the White House if people do not get those tax returns on time.
How's this going to end?
Well, I actually think Trump's made one major miscalculation.
Which is?
He thinks if he gets the wall, he wins. I actually think he wants the issue. If I was Donald Trump and in the White House, and I don't want to be there. But if I was them, I would say, you know what, we may want having the issue may be our win, not getting the wall. Well, and I think they've made a calculation, a strategic
calculation. The risk there, though, is that he looks weak, right?
But he won't. His base will follow him right over a cliff. he won't look weak to the base. The problem is he's making every calculation on 34% rather than on 51%.
To me, it's not a radical position to say don't build the wall. That's where actually the majority of the country wants. So if we took this from a standpoint of, I totally agree with John, that the thing that's been lost in Washington for the last few years or the last decade is bipartisanship and the ability to look past it and get to the common good. But if we really want to do what the American public wants to do, they want border security, they want the government reopened, and they don't want a wall. They don't want the wall as the way the president expressed. To me, the only way out of this, which it's going to be real, as Rahm said, it's going to get real. Right now, that we're not even paying air traffic controllers who are getting more irritable, more upset. We're not paying TSA agents. That's going to at some point have a huge impact. The president has to get a play. He doesn't really fundamentally want the wall. He wants the ability to talk about the wall. So if he can get the words to say in the passage of something where he can still talk about it, he's going to claim victory.
The statistics you're saying are accurate, that the average American person doesn't necessarily want the wall. But when Rush Limbaugh and Ann Coulter start screaming bloody murder on Twitter, they're the people that ultimately have his ear, which has changed his mind on this. It's when he started hedging and shut down the government. So it depends what happens in conservative media, as sad as it is. But I do think Republicans, we are ultimately emboldened to what they believe.
The president's job is to enforce the laws. We cannot get away from the fact that Congress can pass laws without the president. It's their job to stay there and get this job done, to pass comprehensive immigration. Yeah. If they can go back, veto or not sign within 10 days, it can go back, and then they can pass it. It needs to be good enough to work for the American people. And right now, the American people aren't seeing a government that's working for them. They're seeing a government that's working for themselves, and the partisanship is trumping people.
The House just
and that's the problem.
The House just passed the same bill the Senate uniformly passed, right? That was the bill that everybody agreed back in December. Everybody agreed to it. That's what everybody wanted. Then the president, as Megan said, Ann Coulter and Rush Limbaugh stood up and said, you can't do this, who are the radical element that's intervening in this process. That's the problem.
And finally, we have the Democrats now, what I think is in a good position because they are showing that they have a backbone. They talked about the agenda. I mean, literally the first bill that they put out, House Bill 1, talks about the Democratic agenda. And I think people are excited to see that the Democrats finally have a position that they want to stand on. Now it's important that they have to win the war on words within the public to make sure people can continue to follow along with them.
Rahm, Megan talks about Ann Coulter, Rush Limbaugh. Right. The question is, when are Tom Tillis, Cory Gardner, Susan Collins, when are all the Republicans up in 2020 going to force the presidency?
That's when it becomes basically they realize there's going to be a liability. There's a price point that comes and the lines cross. I would just say in 1994, when there was a government shutdown, the biggest mistake Newt Gingrich made is sitting next to President Clinton and making that the only arena. And my advice to the Speaker and the Democrats, do not allow the negotiations to be the only arena. Pass the same bill in Congress. Pass it over to the Senate. Schumer should file it. You already lost within a half a day 3 Republican senators out of there. I would keep coming at them like a wave that just keeps forcing it, and then the base for the president that he's relying on, that wall, which is the Senate Republicans, starts to weaken. And then you have outside forces, like I really do believe when it's not just 800,000 people not getting a paycheck. When it starts to impact the rest of America. Right now,
we're
just addressing symptoms at this point. We've had more government shutdowns in the past handful of years than I can remember, but previously past that. It's becoming normalized. I think until legislators share in the pain, they need to share in the pain.
The news will be when government's open. That will be the event, right? As opposed to the norm. This is the norm.
Look, we just want government to work and not embarrass us. Is that too much to ask?
But to be
I think in order to share, we need to.
We just want it to work and not embarrass us.
But at the same time, we have to admit that even the American people haven't quite felt the realities of a shutdown yet.
Yes.
Most shutdowns have been over in a week or a few days. When we get to the point where 1 in 8 Americans do not get their food stamps, many of whom are white, many of whom are Trump voters, are children, when the effects of this shutdown really start to impact the American people, it's going to be a different conversation on Capitol Hill.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.